Good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to the second podcast in our CoaCon series of the businesses and people that we partner with in providing solutions into the complex world of insurance, compensation and disability services. Today, I'm here with my colleague and good friend Amanda Watson from Audit Hub. Welcome, Amanda.
Thanks, Mark.
Thank you for spending time with us today and sharing your insights into the NDIS world, which is the topic of our conversation today, and in particular, the auditing and compliance complexities of the NDIS. Amanda, would you mind starting just by introducing yourself and where your business, Audit Hub, sits in the NDIS space?
Absolutely. Thanks for having me. So I'm the founder of Audit Hub. Audit Hub came into being to support NDIS providers and aged care providers really navigate what is quite a complex journey to participate in this scheme. So we support providers of all scales and all kinds of service offerings with compliance guidance and really designing bespoke systems that are going to support their business, deliver quality services and be compliant.
Yep. And the compliance space has been getting quite a bit of attention in the media and the conversations that are going on with government. We will talk to the risks of non-compliance in the NDIS space shortly. But I just wanted to talk to our viewers about our connection and why we have got together, which I've found very interesting in the journey of talking to you over the course of many years now, and where we connect between what values drive Audit Hub and how that connects with the values of CoaCon.
Yeah, absolutely. And it is always those values, right? So obviously both you and I are very driven to provide solutions to business. And that's what we at Audit Hub have seen, is trying to work out what are those pain points that so many of these amazing providers and these specialists are actually trying to deliver. What are their pain points and how do we support them? And so, I think that we both are aligned on that front.
Well, in a space where there are 155,000 providers that have been in the NDIS over the course of time, there are only 75,000 that have provided an invoice to the NDIS in the last 3 to 6 months, and only 6,000 of those, approximately, are registered. What does that mean for the NDIS, and what are the risks to the scheme and the providers in that space from your point of view?
That's a big question, right? So, and of course we've just had the outcomes of that NDIS review that have been released, and of course that's what's driving a lot of conversation in our sector at the moment, and with that unfortunately a lot of uncertainty as to what this means. So businesses and provider specialists wanting to participate in this space.
It's very interesting that people have qualifications, but when you're providing services outside of the clinical sphere, and that you're going into people's homes, you're treating people with disabilities, and you're providing services to them, that is a very complex space. And if there's no compliance and there's no standards of service, as a business person, I'm perplexed as to how those services can continue to be provided, understanding the standards that people are expecting.
Yeah, that's right.
Is there a mismatch there between expectations of the participant and provider standards?
Yeah, absolutely. So there are, of course, standards that are provided by the Commission. It's the NDIS Quality and Safeguard Standards. They are actually mandatory, don't forget, for some business types and some providers, and particularly, for example, positive behaviour support practitioners. They must be registered, right?
Yep.
So, and they are required to meet certain standards. But for your therapists, they are operating, for example, as sole traders, your occupational therapists, speech pathologists, etc. They're actually not required to abide by or have these standards that they must meet. Of course, they have their industry standard.
Yep.
Don't forget,
Yep.
they're
Yep.
competent.
They're
They have
professional
correct.
standards. Yep.
That's right. And providing services in this space, of course, they are required to meet a code of conduct. Everybody's required to meet that code of conduct. But for the end user, and of course, this is what the scheme has been designed as, a person-centred scheme. So for the end user, I think is the important, what does it mean for them? How can they be assured that they're actually engaging with a provider who is going to be delivering that quality assessment, that quality report that they need, right? So there is that kind of, how do we provide them confidence? And at the moment, to your point, I think that that's a real gap.
So a quick plug for Audit Hub. Why and how does Audit Hub provide fill a gap in the participant being able to understand what's the difference between a compliant and high standard and quality provider and one that may not be?
Yeah, so for those businesses that voluntarily choose to become a registered provider, I applaud them. We have been operating in compliance and with multiple standards for many years. I believe that standards provide a great framework. They're good business practice. So whether you choose to be registered and certified or not, you can actually look at these standards and get some really great structure, some organisation. It's good business practice. So Audit Hub, works with both registered and unregistered providers. So regardless of whether they go ultimately through to the registration step, we really are firm believers that good business practice, is built on structure and can easily, and I think it's valuable to meet those standards.
And in terms of what the NDIA and the scheme designers are talking about now, where does that fit in the now state and the possible future state? Because we've heard a number of conflicting, as I understand it, visions for the registration of providers in the space. Where do you see it now?
Yeah, so you're right. Out of the NDIS review, and to your earlier point, there is the need for greater transparency and oversight of businesses that are participating in this space. It's been identified as a priority. So one of the things the review recommended was that there would be mandatory registration for all service, any service, right? So what we're looking at potentially is a mandatory registration process. Of course, we take a risk-based approach to compliance and to registration. So it looks like there may be 4 categories of registration.
Yep.
So obviously reflective of, we have lower risk registration for people who don't have a lot of direct contact with participants, right up to those providers that are delivering direct supports into the person's home. So at the moment, that's where we're looking. I think we're looking at a multiple tier registration process. But ultimately, what we come back to in terms of argument is that this scheme was designed to be person-centred and to give the participant choice and control. Once you start making it mandatory for all registered providers to become registered, in effect, you are removing choice and control for many participants who have been able to, find, and they have services delivered by unregistered providers.
Yep.
So that's what the conversation is all about that at the moment.
And is that going to add another level of cost and make the challenge of becoming a profitable provider more challenging to the industry?
So I can't actually say what their intent is around any external cost for processing, for example, that registration. I would say that for many of your therapists and practitioners and specialists, I would say that the costs won't change significantly. At the moment, the NDIS registration, as I said, takes a risk-based approach. They recognise that these specialists are professionals, and therefore they don't need to have a strong oversight regulatory requirement for these guys. They've always been considered to be a lower risk registration group. And so I don't see that that's necessarily going to change.
Yeah, yeah. Okay. In terms of possible future solutions that Audit Hub must be thinking about, I assume that as a small business operator with a lot of passion, you're always looking at the risks of your own business down the road.
Oh.
What do you see as the possible future state?
For Audit Hub?
Yeah.
Yeah, so we're always driven to really bring value out of compliance. We work so closely with our providers, trying to, really find a way that we can provide a solution to many of their pain points. Yep. And it goes to efficient systems.
Efficient systems, that's
Correct.
An interesting space. And that's probably where our lives will intersect again in the future, where we may be able to provide now a little bit of a seed to the future, where Kawakon is working with Audit Hub and being able to provide more cost-effective access and registrations into the NDIS. So watch this space. Okay, Amanda, a lot of providers aren't registered. So there's a market aspect to this that's been created. Why would someone want to become a registered provider? Why are there so many people that aren't registered providers in this space? And where do you fit in that solution?
Yeah. So I think the decision for already operating specialists and practitioners, the decision not to become registered is quite often there's a cost involved with becoming registered in the first place. Of course, there's an external audit cost that needs to be considered. But also I hear a lot that, there's a cost of compliance. There also seems to be a cost of doing business as that's actually attached to being a provider of NDIS services. So I think that those sort of three things, really come into whether a provider or a specialist wants to participate fully in this space as a registered provider.
Yeah, yeah. And why would they want to come to you?
They come to me because they want to have the initial conversation around, whether this is worth it, right? And what does it involve? It's quite difficult to find that starting point and really have confidence that you are going down that registration journey in the right way. There's a lot of opportunities and there's a lot of offerings that you could potentially participate in. So that's why they come to Audit Hub. They just, want to scope what this offering is about. How do I actually start this journey and what's involved?
Yeah. And do you ever knock people back?
Yeah, I do actually.
Do you?
So yeah, I've sent quite a few people away to do some preliminary reading.
Yep.
And to really understand this sector as much as they can. I think that that's just really good business practice. And I think that demonstrates, intent. If you're prepared to do some foundation work and understand this space, then, we're prepared to work.
So you're not prepared just to take anybody. You want to make sure that they've done their homework and they're ready for this journey.
Not necessarily ready for the journey, because I understand that journey may not be clear. But definitely I would like them to have demonstrated that, they really have an intent to enter this space.
Yeah. Well, it's not for everybody.
No, it's not.
But I know from having worked with you previously that your integrity in providing services in the space is the best. And I hope that everyone that comes to use Audit Hub's services has a good experience as we did.
Thanks, Mark. No, we're really passionate about what we do. We're here to actually, break down some complexity. It's actually not as big as many, providers actually perceive at the start of their journey. It is good business practice, and we support them to get those good business practices in place. So as we go through, of course, some of there are challenges, of course, the language, etc., as always. But no, it's what we actually do deliver is just good business sense.
Okay. All right. Well, we're going to take a quick break, and we will come back to you with a bit of a wrap momentarily.